Hello, everyone. This is Lisa Alvarez from Storyteller Productions, and we have our first day of experiment number 3, which means we are doing a collective tarot reading. Now, those of you who have not yet joined our tarot readings before, what I normally do is I have 2 decks here. I have the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshitani and Next World Tarot by Christy C. Rode. And I essentially have a couple of prompts for the cards that I pull that are meant to develop the plot or inspiration behind this next collective folktale. I, as a witchy person, obviously, but also as a storyteller, I feel that many of our folktales and myths that we normally rely on are centered around Western and, historical stories, and they were meant for the collective of that time, right? So this first day of the Storyteller Project is meant to bring forward those messages that are resonating for today, especially within the community of those of you who are either watching this live via the Discord or those of you who are listening when this is posted later today and even later this week or this month or next year. This is meant to connect with people in the community that this podcast and this company, the Storyteller Productions company, and who I touch. So keeping that in mind, and I've said this the last couple of times too, that even if you're not totally bought into this, collective subconscious or collective unconscious theory or any of the witchy stuff, this can still be a creative exercise, right? So as I pull the cards, I want you to think about what are some of the themes in which you feel are unaddressed by the collective today, that you want to be addressed, things that could be pulled forward in many of the stories that we explore, the stories that we love tend to have these timeless messages. So what is it that potentially could be, for experiment number 3, one of those messages or a couple of those messages? As I cut the decks, which I'm doing right now, and I shuffle, I want you to think about those messages that are not being told as frequently, or that you haven't heard in a while, or that are kind of weighing on your heart or your mind. And as I shuffle these, I'm also going to invite you to take a few breaths. Three is always a good number to take, so if you want to take 3 breaths. Take just 1 breath. Or 7 breaths. In any case, don't just take no breaths, right? Breathing is good. It's somatic. And again, I, as a human being, and even as a witchy person, I actually have incense burning right now to get me in the mood. I still believe we are human. We live in this world. We got to keep breathing. Got to keep moving. We got to see where we are all at any given time. And that's what this collective tarot reading is meant to do. See where we're all at and where we might want to go. All right. So, again, I have the Tarot of the Divine here, and I actually got a paper cut. So we have blood spilled. I guess the trigger warning. I'll probably put a trigger warning. A little bit of it's a paper cut, but maybe, is that a good sign? Is that a bad sign? Who knows? We are about to probably find out. So, just as a reminder of those of you who haven't listened to the collective tarot reading before, Tarot of the Divine has a lot of traditional fairy tales from around the world, and Next World Tarot has very modern aesthetic and activist aesthetic, and but also with a globalist lean or a global lean, right? Of people from a variety of different marginalized communities in the messages. And I feel like using these both together has been really effective. So while I pull each card, I will be using my own intuition, but I'll be going from one to the other. But I usually start with the nature of the main character, and I usually like to start off with just figuring out which one wants to begin. And I'm feeling the Next World Tarot for the nature of the main character. Oh, we have the nature of the main character is the magician. So in this card, the magician is part of the major arcana. And in this is a person who is wearing a hijab. They are seated in front of the lake. They have a bunch of books in front of them and a notebook in front of them. Traditionally, the magician is someone who uses all the tools at their disposal to wield their will, to make change, to transform themselves and the people around them. This is someone who is very strong, has a strong personality, and strong knowledge of their own power, which is interesting for a main character who's already kind of at a really confident space in their life, right? I'm going to look at it, see if there's any other. So some of the books, in the book, they have feminist theory, emergency first response, herbal medicine, and pathology. So this is someone who has obviously a quite wide range of knowledge, but a slight leaning to the healing modalities, maybe? Hold on to that for now. Okay, so that's the nature of the main character. The nature of the conflict will be pulled from the Tarot of the Divine. And it is the Tower. So the Tower is one of those stories and one of those cards that I often I get super uncomfortable personally seeing the Tower, because it usually means there is an unstable foundation that is about to crack and fall apart. And in the Tarot Divine, the story, this is clearly Rapunzel. The image is of Rapunzel's tower and two people falling. And it's one of them's Rapunzel, who has just cut their hair. You can see the image of Rapunzel's braid going down the tower. But this is, for those of you who don't know the story of Rapunzel, kind of in the last half, she and her lover, who tries to save her, plummet. They leave the tower. She sacrifices what's considered her biggest talent so that she could be free. But usually what happens afterwards is that her lover, his eyes are pricked out by the thorns that surround the castle. So it's a pretty devastating moment, which I think is a pretty interesting nature for a conflict to have happen, especially considering our magician, someone who is very talented, suddenly encounters some kind of rift, some kind of disaster, and has to sacrifice some part of themselves to survive. But it's not a happy ending just yet. So the nature of this person's motivation is strength. And this is again from the Next World Tarot. And it is an image of a person who is tending to their garden and is both, there's small plants and large, lush plants. I find it interesting that this particular image was chosen for strength for Next World Tarot, because it's normally the image that's known with this card is a young maiden who is essentially taming a lion. And this image shows that strength comes from nurturing, knowing your own power. But specifically, this is taking that, nurturing stance, and how rough it is to put your hands in the dirt and actually do really hard physical work, right? Gardening is part of that. So I think that's an interesting motivation for someone who, in the magician, is more of the mental or healing modality, but clearly is studying. This is kind of a motivation to maybe move into the physical strength rather than just mental strength or emotional strength. So the next card will be the antagonist, or the antagonistic circumstance, right? And it is the Ace of Cups from the Tarot of the Divine. So the Ace of Cups is the first deck, or it's the first number of the suit. So it's usually cups. It's a cup being filled up. I'm actually going to pull out the Tarot Divine because I don't recognize the fairy tale that's being shown here. So it looks like Ace of Cups is Matsuo Sake. So this is a Japanese mythology, a Japanese myth. And in the descriptor, it's the Ace of Cups marks a new beginning, a reason to drink and be merry, to open up subconscious feelings. Sake is a drink of the gods, bringing people closer to the spirit world. I actually want to say who Matsuo is. So I'm actually going to look this up online. Matsuo. Oh, so Matsuo, well, the first thing I see is actually this person is a poet. I wonder if, and I'm just looking obviously on the Wikipedia page, but I'm going to keep this in mind that there's one person who is Matsuo, and I'm going to say Matsuo and Sake. I'm going to look this up. And Sake. But the interesting thing is that it's a drink of the gods. So I feel like what may be part of and because this is the antagonist, I wonder if it has to do with there's some kind of conflict maybe with the gods or with a god, right? Let's see. Oh, this is actually a god. It's the kami Matsuo. So there is actually somebody did write out some on a Facebook post actually, and again, we'll take this with a grain of salt, and I'll do my own research after this too, and give everybody a context. But so Matsuo is a kami, and he wanted to impress his fellow kamis, which are the equivalent of what we would say gods or orisha, or they're powerful beings. So he went to Arashiyama, the god of rice, and asked to use some water. He then went to Kyoto, the god of water, and asked them for some of their purest spring water. Matsuo put the two together and brewed the very first sake. All the other kami loved the new drink so much it became the drink of the kami. And that is how Matsuo became the god of sake. This is interesting. So this is a god of an alcoholic drink. And this is what is in the position of the antagonist. I'm going to hold on to that because that's a very interesting type of antagonist to have. And I'd be curious of what nature, or how this contributes to the conflict of something being destroyed. I'm going to hold on to that. Let's go to the next thing here. And that is the allies and the skills that will be needed to overcome the conflict and confront the antagonist. The Chariot, holy cow, there's actually a lot of major arcana in this, which means that these are a lot of really strong themes, and I'm curious of how this is going to come together in my own mind because I'm not entirely sure. So the Chariot, I pulled it from the Next World Tarot, and it is an image of a person who looks absolutely fabulous, is dressed in a beautiful pink dress, and I'm just thinking of the Barbie movie. Oh my god. Let's hold on that right now. But that's the first thing that comes to mind, and maybe it comes to mind because it is a big collective thing on a lot of people's minds in our society right now. But anyway, this person is in this, it looks like some kind of futuristic world, and has some like small mini elephants, a blue and a pink one, accompanying this person. And this is such, I kind of want to actually look up, I don't think I have the booklet that's associated with it, of the creative choices behind the Chariot, but normally the Chariot has to do where you go. It's the way you move around the world. And I think the interpretation for this Chariot card is the way you move about the world is incredibly personal. It's a personal choice, but it's also an empowering choice. So maybe the skills needed in this is knowing and having a more sure way of moving around the world and expressing yourself. Of the Chariot is literally, it's a tool. It's a tool and a skill set of being able to, take you from place to place, whether it's to the future or to a better future, or it's to the past. This seems, because of the nature of the background in this image, it looks like they're heading towards the future here. What skills and what kind of modalities of moving through the world need to change in order to be effective at moving into this new world? Clearly, it means being a little bit zhuzhed up, a little bit sassy and bold and strange. Like these two like miniature elephants. They also look pretty zhuzhed up, being purple and blue. But they're really cool looking. I will be posting the photos of this later. So let's talk about the next part. And this is also a big part of any story, which is what needs to be sacrificed. And what must be sacrificed in order for the next stage of the story, what needs to be left behind in order for what is better for all of us to go forward. And it is the Seven of Cups. So this image from the Seven of Cups of the Tarot of the Divine is the story of Aladdin. And it's when Aladdin is confronted in the Cave of Wonders by the many different lamps and treasures that are laid out everywhere in the cave. The Seven of Cups usually has to do with choice. It has to do with not being sure which is the right choice. Not knowing and feeling like you're overwhelmed by different desires and different items. It seems like it's a little too simple to say that you have to sacrifice your choice, the illusion of choice. But it's interesting because the story of Aladdin is about this desiring to be great, and this is something that it's starting to be a pattern in this reading, because a lot of these, the magician's strength, the chariot, they all kind of have to do with really like bombastic, big personalities and huge desires and strength and strengths in will, right? This seems to be confronting that part of us that, in Aladdin is, trying to go from rags to riches through technically trickstery means, right? And it's something to be wished. It's a life to be wished for. But according to the conflict here, a lot of this desire is based off of a poor basis, a poor foundation, or an unstable foundation, rather. And I think that's interesting to have as something that needs to be sacrificed, this image of these choices and this drive to try to choose the right thing, to fake it till you make it, which is exactly the story of Aladdin. But also accepting that whatever choice you make might not be the ideal one. It's simply life. So, all right, we have two more cards to pull here. The last card is kind of where this is all ending up. What's the message supposed to be? What is the point of a story like this? And then again, I'm pulling from the Next World Tarot. And it is the 10 of Wands. So this is interesting, and I'm actually not sure the background. I guess, again, I don't know where I put that booklet, because I feel like it would be really useful to have to understand the meaning behind it. I'll have to look at it later. But the image is of a person in a chair, and it looks like they're holding a they're holding a book, or they're holding it looks actually like they're a musician. There's music, there's a music sheet in the background. On the wall there's images of records, and in the back there's like a bookshelf, looks like it's full of records. And the Ten of Wands normally does mean a completion of a really difficult task. Wands are associated with fire and willpower. And again, like we've mentioned this before, but like a lot of these cards have to do with will. And the message here seems to be about willpower, of being able to truly focus on what you want, but in a way that has to do with almost like the creative process. When we talk about will and like, enforcing your will, it's a very, it can lead to burnout, right? It can be a negative thing to enforce your will when you don't have the right oomph behind it. There was a message that actually my mentor shared recently, and I think this is actually relevant, is our ability to change the world or lead the life we want to live doesn't actually come from our will. It comes from our desire. It comes from the things that truly draw us in a way that's not logical, a way that's deeper than simply just, bulldozing your way through things. That you can do that, but if you are not fed by something deeper, of drive that allows you to feel things more fully, then you're going to burn yourself out. It's natural to burn yourself out over things that just don't matter to you, right? I think a lot of us have experienced that in our work life, in our love life, in many different aspects of life, that if we are trying to push through things, that it can lead to burnout. But this message is about the will to create something beautiful and important. I'm going to have to look to see who this actually is in Christy Rhodes' 10 of Wands. I'm actually going to look this up right now. 10 of Wands. I'm going to hope that it actually shows up. So it's a structure. So here marks a structure built on blood, sweat, tears, and completion. The structure is sound yet alive, as the Ten of Wands is patiently enamored by the intricacies of his home. Away from the beauty of the natural world, but reminiscent of the blue of the sea, the rage of a fire, the stability of earth, and the truth in the air. Ten of Wands made a cataclysmic creation and found a home in the debris of its destruction. From ashes to concrete, he toiled to build a foundation and can now relax. The Ten of Wands asks you to question your stability. Do you feel complete? Does your space truly hold you? Are you still caulking the cracks in the foundation? Are you home? The Ten of Wands asks you to fight for honor and recognition. It's the safest route to stability after a life of creative chaos. That is very interesting, because it does truly, that's what we were just talking about in terms of what the conflict is a shaky foundation, a poor foundation doesn't actually support you. Interesting, right? So, the last one I usually try to check, and I'm going to check this. I usually check the bottom of each deck to see if there is a major arcana, and that's usually a message from the collective shadow, if there is any. And there is! There is a message from the collective shadow. At the bottom of the Tarot of the Divine is Temperance. It's a Temperance card. So Temperance usually has to do with a balance. It's the process of tempering something, say in blacksmithing, for example, has to do with that balance between fire and water on steel, or on to make steel, to make various metal works, right? You need both fire and water in order to temper something, to make it strong and make it stable. And it seems to me that if this is coming from the collective shadow, part of this message has to do with the fact that we are not balanced. We are not using the tools of our disposal in a in a equal way, in a balanced way, right? So the story behind this is bodhisattva. So the image itself is of a bodhisattva, Buddhist bodhisattva from India. It's the Avalokiteshvara, and I apologize for my pronunciation. Avalokiteshvara. Temperance is about balance and meditation. So the bodhisattva identities are fluid, but their goodwill remains constant. There's something about encountering challenges, especially world-altering challenges here, that have to do with whether or not we ourselves are balanced. And if we're not balanced, we can fall. If our foundations are not balanced or are not stable, they crumble. So living in a world where I'm sure many of us are experiencing a lot of instability, where can we find that stability? And what story, and this is a question for me, is what story, what myth can be created from these elements? From all of these elements, the magician as the main character, the tower as the conflict, strength as the main character's motivation or what they're seeking, the antagonist as the Ace of Cups, the skills of the Chariot, what needs sacrificing the Seven of Cups, and understanding the message of the Ten of Wands and Temperance. This is my challenge, and I will attempt for all of you to be up to that challenge. Thank you so much for listening to this tarot reading. I will be posting this very soon after I close out here, and I want to thank everyone for bringing yourselves to this. I'm excited to see what I create. Tomorrow, I will join again at 12 p.m. Eastern on the live stream in the Storytellers Workshop on the Discord channel. And tomorrow will be the creation of the hook and a mood board that represents the hook. I'm excited. I do love creating the mood boards. So thank you. And I will also be posting the final spread and the decks used in the show notes, so you can review them at your leisure. Again, this is a experiment, right, to create a new folktale, and it is paid for by the Storyteller Project Fund. We have just 4 more days to raise $200. We are already at 23% of the way there, so I am hoping that we can get to 200, and anything after that will be put into the Storyteller Project Fund for future projects, and anyone else who wants to try their hand at this will receive an honorarium for simply attempting. So I encourage you to be out in community, whether or not you're a storyteller yourself, or you receive the benefits of great stories, or, halfway good ones. I thank you all for listening. I hope this was an interesting reading. It was interesting for me, and I have a good challenge on my hands to figure out how to string these together into a coherent narrative. All right, I'm signing off now. I appreciate your time. This is Lisa Alvarez with the Storyteller Project. Thank you for listening.